She slid the credit card statement across my kitchen table, like she was dealing me a losing hand of poker. $63,412. My daughter-in-law smiled when she saw my face go pale. She actually smiled. I'm 74 years old. I taught fourth grade in Eugene for 38 years. I raised 2 children mostly by myself after my husband passed in 1998, and I never once asked anybody for a thing I didn't earn. So when I tell you what happened the morning of March 11th, I want you to understand I'm not the kind of woman who gets pushed around. I just made one mistake. I trusted the wrong person because I loved my son. Let me back up. My son's name is Curtis. He's 46 years old, works as a regional manager for a heating and cooling company, and he's a good boy. I want to say that first because what comes next isn't really his fault, even though some of you might disagree by the end. Curtis married a woman named Brielle 11 years ago. She came from Sacramento, said her parents had passed, said she'd been working in pharmaceutical sales but wanted a fresh start. She was pretty. She had that kind of dark hair that always looked like she'd just stepped out of a salon, and she laughed at all of Curtis's jokes, even the ones that weren't funny. I should have paid attention to that. A woman who laughs too easily is hiding something. They had my granddaughter, Sauerse, 2 years after the wedding. That child is the light of my life. I'm going to say her name a lot, so I'll tell you now, it's pronounced Saoirse. Brielle picked it. She said it meant freedom in Irish. Saoirse is 9 years old now, with her father's brown eyes and a gap between her front teeth that her mother keeps trying to fix with orthodontists. But Saoirse won't sit still long enough for impressions. That's my granddaughter. Stubborn. Smart. Already reading at a 6th grade level. The trouble started last August. Brielle called me on a Tuesday morning. I remember because I was watering the tomatoes on my back porch, and my hands were dirty, and I had to wipe them on my apron before I picked up. Her voice was thin and shaky in a way I'd never heard before. She said Sauerse had been to the pediatrician, that the doctor found something on her blood work, and that they needed to run more tests at the Children's Hospital in Portland. The kind of tests insurance was going to fight them on. The kind that would need to be paid up front and reimbursed later, maybe if the appeals went their way. I asked her how much. She said she didn't know yet. Maybe $12,000. Maybe more. Now, I want to tell you something. I don't have a lot of money. My pension from the Eugene School District is about $3,800 a month. Social Security adds another $1,900. I own my house outright because Donald and I paid it off in 1994, but I'd been saving for years, putting away whatever I could from each pension check, mostly for Saoirse's college and for whatever burial costs my children might face when I'm gone. I had about $112,000 in the savings account at First Cascade Bank. That was everything. I told Brielle I'd give her the money for the tests. Whatever she needed, she cried on the phone. I remember that. She said, "Oh, Mom, I knew you'd come through for her. I knew it." She'd been calling me Mom for about 3 years by then, and every time she said it, I felt this little warm pop in my chest because I'd always wanted a daughter and I never had one. My own daughter, Tamsin, lives in Albuquerque and we don't talk much. That's a different story for a different day. Brielle said it would be easier if she just had access to one of my cards. The credit card, specifically, because the hospital's billing system was complicated and they'd need to charge things in increments, and she didn't want to keep calling me every time. I said okay. I gave her the number off my Discover card, the one I'd had for 22 years and barely used because I prefer cash and a checkbook like a sensible person. I want to stop right here and tell you what I should have done. I should have called the hospital myself. I should have asked Curtis. I should have at least asked which doctor was treating her. But I didn't, because Brielle was crying, and Sauerse is my granddaughter, and when somebody you love is scared about a child, your brain stops working the way it should. That's what they count on, people like Brielle. They count on your love being louder than your common sense. For about 5 months, I didn't think much about it. Brielle would call every couple weeks with updates. The tests were ongoing. They were running panels. They were waiting on a specialist. Sawirs was doing fine, thank God. Just a little tired, just a little pale. I'd talk to Sarah on the phone sometimes, and she'd sound exactly like herself, chattering on about her science fair project on monarch butterflies, asking when I was going to come visit. I told her after the holidays, soon as the roads cleared up. In January, my Discover card statement came in the mail. I usually get my statements digitally because Curtis set that up for me a few years ago, but Discover still mails paper ones too if you've been a customer long enough. I almost threw it in the recycling without opening it. That's what I usually do. The autopay handles everything. But something made me slit it open with my thumbnail. I think it was because I'd had a strange dream the night before about Donald, and I was in a sentimental mood, sorting through old mail. The balance was $41,800. I thought it was a mistake. I genuinely did. I sat at my kitchen table for about 10 minutes, just staring at it, drinking my coffee, waiting for my brain to catch up. Then I called Discover. The customer service woman was very patient with me. She walked me through every charge for the past 5 months. Nordstrom again. Louis Vuitton. A spa in Napa Valley. 3 flights to Las Vegas. A jewelry store in Beverly Hills. A restaurant called 11 Madison Park that I later looked up and found out was in New York City, not Portland, and where one dinner cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. I asked her if there were any medical charges, any hospital bills. There was a pause. Then she said, "Ma'am, I'm not seeing anything here that looks medical." I thanked her. I asked her not to do anything yet. I said I needed to think. I sat at that kitchen table until the sun went down. I didn't eat dinner. I didn't turn on a single light. I just sat there and let the dark come into the room. Around 9 that night, I called Curtis. I asked him to come over the next day alone without Brielle. He said sure. He had a service call near my neighborhood Wednesday afternoon. He'd swing by after. When he got there, I made him sit down at the table. I put the statement in front of him. I watched my son's face do what my face had done the day before, that slow drain of color, that confused half smile that means your brain is searching for a reasonable explanation that isn't there. "Mom," he said, "there has to be some kind of mistake." "No, honey," I said, "there's no mistake." I asked him about Circe's tests, about the doctor, about the appointments at the Children's Hospital in Portland. He stared at me. He didn't say anything for a long time. And then, real quietly, he said, "Mom, Circe hasn't been to a doctor in a year and a half. Her last appointment was her annual checkup. She's perfectly healthy." I won't lie to you. I cried then, not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet tears that sat in the bottoms of my eyes and dripped onto my placemats. Curtis put his hand on mine, but his hand was shaking too. He said, "I'm going to handle this, Mom. Don't worry. I'm going to talk to her." I told him no. I told him I needed to think first. I told him I needed a few days. He didn't argue. He kissed the top of my head and went home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in Donald's old recliner in the living room, and I went through everything in my head. Every conversation Brielle and I had ever had. Every time she'd asked me for a small loan over the years and never paid it back. The $5,000 for the new car down payment. The $1,800 for Salzer's preschool. The $9,000 for moving expenses when they bought their house. None of it ever paid back. None of it ever even mentioned again, like it had never happened. I'd always told myself that was just how families worked, that I was helping my son's family, that Brielle was grateful in her own way. But sitting in that chair at 3 in the morning, I started to see it differently. I started to see a pattern, a long, patient pattern, and I remembered something else. 3 years ago, I'd had a stroke scare. It turned out to be nothing, just a TIA, a kind of mini-stroke that resolves on its own. But I was in the hospital for 2 days, and Brielle came to visit me, and she sat by my bed and she held my hand and she said, "Mom, you should really think about getting your affairs in order. just so things are easy for Curtis when the time comes. And I'd nodded because I was scared and I was tired, and I'd said I would. 2 weeks later, she came over with a stack of papers from a lawyer she said she'd found for me. Power of attorney documents. A new will. She said it would just make everything simpler. I told her I wasn't ready. I told her I'd talk to my own lawyer when I felt up to it. She'd looked at me with this expression I'd never seen on her face before. Just for a second. Then it was gone. She'd smiled and said, "Of course, Mom. Take your time." That look. Sitting in Donald's chair at 3 in the morning, I finally understood that look. It was the look of a hunter who'd missed her shot and was already loading the next round. The next morning, I called my old friend Bernadette. Her name isn't Bernadette in real life, but I'm changing it because she's still alive, and I don't need her caught up in this on the internet. Bernadette and I taught together for 26 years. She'd retired the same year I did. Her son is an attorney in Portland. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting once, the way only a teacher can listen. When I was done, she said, "Lorna, you call my son tomorrow morning. Don't do anything else. Don't call Brielle. Don't say a word to Curtis. Just call Aldous." So I did. Aldous spent 2 hours on the phone with me that Friday. He asked me questions I never would have thought to ask myself. He asked about every gift I'd ever given Brielle, every loan, every signed document. He asked about my will, my house, my accounts. He asked if I had any recordings of conversations with her. I told him I didn't. He told me to start. He said in the state of Oregon, you only need one party's consent to record a conversation. That's me. He said I should buy a small digital recorder and keep it in my purse. And the next time Brielle came over, the next time she called, I should record everything. He also said something I'll never forget. He said, "Mrs. Hatchley, you're going to want to confront her. You're going to want to scream at her. Don't. The longer you stay quiet, the more rope she'll give herself." I bought the recorder that afternoon at a Best Buy in town. It cost $42.99. I want you to remember that number. For the next 6 weeks, I played the part. I called Brielle. I asked how Sayers's tests were going. She said they were almost done. The doctors were narrowing it down. They thought it might just be a mild iron deficiency. I said, "Thank goodness." I said I was so relieved. I told her I loved her. I told her I'd send another payment if they needed it. She said maybe just a little more, maybe 20,000 more. Just to be safe. I said, "Of course, sweetheart." Of course, Aldous and I had set up something, a trust, a legitimate, ironclad, attorney-drafted trust in the state of Oregon, with my granddaughter Sayersa as the sole beneficiary. The trust held $45,000 I'd quietly moved from my savings into a new account at a different bank, one Brielle didn't know existed. The trust was structured so that only Sayersa, and only Sayersa, could access it, and only for educational purposes, with disbursements managed by a fiduciary at the bank. Brielle could not touch it. Curtis could not touch it. Even I could not touch it once it was established. It was Sayers's, and only Sayers's, and it would be there for her when she turned 18, regardless of anything that happened to me or anybody else. I also did one other thing. I went down to First Cascade Bank, the one where I'd had my main savings account for 40 years, and I closed it. I moved the remaining funds, about $63,000, into a new account at a credit union in Springfield. I told no one, not even Curtis. The morning of March 11th started gray and cold. I'd asked Curtis and Brielle to come over for breakfast. I told them I had something important to discuss. I made eggs and bacon and the cinnamon rolls Sayers loved, even though Sayersa wasn't coming. She was at school. Brielle showed up in white jeans and a cashmere sweater I'd never seen before. Curtis looked tired. He'd been quiet for weeks, and I knew he suspected something, but he didn't know what. I'd asked him to trust me. I'd said, "Honey, I just need you to be present. Whatever happens, just be present and listen." We ate breakfast. Brielle talked about a vacation they were planning to take to Hawaii in the summer. She'd already booked the resort. She showed me pictures on her phone. She said, "Mom, you should come with us. You haven't traveled in so long." I said, "Maybe. We'll see." When we'd finished eating, I cleared the dishes. I came back to the table with a manila envelope. I sat down. I had the recorder in the front pocket of my cardigan, running. I said, "Brielle, sweetheart, I need to talk to you about Sweertz's medical tests." Her face didn't change much. "She's good. I'll give her that." She just took a sip of coffee and said, "What about them?" I said. "How are they going?" She launched into a whole story. The doctors had finally figured it out. It was a vitamin deficiency mostly, a little anemia. Saweers was going to be fine, but they'd needed to do one more panel, and would I mind helping with that one too, just 15,000 more, and then they'd be all done, and she'd be back to normal. Curtis was staring at her. His mouth was slightly open. I could see him understanding. I said, "Brielle, I called Saweers's pediatrician last week." She set down her coffee. I said, "Dr. Yamaguchi." "Lovely woman. She told me Saweersa hasn't been seen for any tests since her last well-child visit 14 months ago. She told me Saweersa is in perfect health. I have never seen a person change colors so fast. She went pale, then red, then a kind of white-yellow I associate with people who are about to be sick." She tried to laugh. She said, "Mom, I think there must be a mix-up at the office. I've been taking her to a specialist in—" I said, "Stop." She stomped. I opened the manila envelope. I pulled out the credit card statements. All 5 of them. I laid them on the table one by one like I was dealing cards. I said, $63,412. Nordstrom. Louis Vuitton. A jewelry store in Beverly Hills. 3 trips to Las Vegas. A restaurant in New York. A spa in Napa. Not one single charge from a hospital or a doctor's office or a pharmacy. Curtis put his head in his hands. Brielle stared at the statements. Then she did something I will remember until the day I die. She looked up at me, and her face went smooth, and her eyes went hard. And the soft, little voice she always used with me disappeared. She said in a voice I'd never heard her use, "Well, what are you going to do about it, Lorna? Press charges on your own daughter-in-law? Drag your son's wife through court? Tear his family apart?" C smiled. She actually smiled at me. She said, "You're not going to do anything. You're going to die in this house alone with debt collectors at your door, and you're going to leave whatever's left to me and Curtis anyway, because you don't have anybody else." Curtis said, "Brielle." "Brielle, what are you saying?" She didn't even look at him. She looked at me. She said, "She knows what I'm saying. She's smart. She knows how this ends." I let her finish. I let her sit there in her cashmere sweater, in my kitchen, eating my food, staring at me with those hard, cold eyes. I let her think she'd won. Then I pulled the recorder out of my pocket and set it on the table. I said, "I want you to know that everything you just said has been recorded, along with our last 6 phone conversations, in which you described medical tests for my granddaughter that never happened and asked me for additional money to cover them." She didn't move. I said, "I've been working with an attorney since January. His name is Aldous Pemberton. He's already drafted a civil claim for fraud and elder financial abuse. In the state of Oregon, that's a Class C felony, sweetheart. He's also drafted a separate document terminating my financial relationship with you and Curtis effective today." I looked at my son. He was crying, just sitting there, still as a stone, with tears running down his face. I said, "Curtis, I love you. This is not about you. You did not do this. But you married this woman, and you brought her into our family, and what happens next is going to depend on what you decide to do." I turned back to Brielle. I said, "I closed my savings account at First Cascade 2 months ago. The account you've been hoping to inherit doesn't exist anymore. The money is gone. Some of it is in a place you'll never find. Some of it has already been moved into a trust for Sarah in her name that you will never have access to. Not now, not after I'm dead, not ever. She'll get it when she turns 18, and she'll use it for college, and you'll have nothing to do with any of it. Brielle's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I said, as for the $63,000 on my credit card, you're going to pay every penny of it back. You're going to sell that ridiculous handbag, and the jewelry, and the car you bought last year, and you're going to write a check to Discover, and you're going to do it within 90 days, or my attorney is going to file every document he's drafted, and you are going to spend the rest of Circe's childhood in court, if not in prison. She started to cry. Real tears. I want to be honest about that. They might have been real. It doesn't matter. I said, and one more thing. I have a copy of every conversation. I have a copy of every statement. I have copies sealed in 3 different locations, with 3 different people who know what to do if anything happens to me. So don't get any ideas. Don't even think them. I stood up. My knees hurt. They've been hurting for years. I said, get out of my house, Brielle. Don't come back. Don't call. Don't text. If you want to see Sarah, Curtis can bring her to me or I'll come to her, but you and I are done. She got up, wobbling a little. She picked up her purse. She didn't say anything. She walked out the front door and got in her car and drove away. Curtis sat at my table for another hour. He didn't say much. He just cried, and I made him fresh coffee, and at one point he said, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have known. I told him I should have known too. I told him love makes us all stupid sometimes. I told him I forgave him, but that he was going to have to make some hard decisions about his marriage, and that Sarah needed to be the center of every one of those decisions. He filed for divorce 6 weeks later. It's been ugly. Brielle paid back $41,000 of the $63,000 before her lawyer convinced her to declare bankruptcy on the rest. The trust for Sarah is intact. She visits me every other weekend now, and she sleeps in the spare room that used to be Curtis's, and we make pancakes on Sunday mornings, and last month she lost her front tooth eating an apple, and we put it under her pillow together. I'm telling you this story because I know there are women my age listening right now who are sitting in similar kitchens, looking at similar statements, and feeling that same cold weight in their chests. The shame of having been fooled, the terror of confrontation, the voice in your head telling you that you should just keep quiet and let it go because you're old and you're tired. And what's the point? The point is your dignity. The point is your Nimmi. The point is the granddaughter who is going to grow up, and the grandson, and the children who deserve to see what it looks like when a woman draws a line. You don't have to scream. You don't have to throw anything. You don't have to call them names or post about it online, or any of the loud things they show on television. You just have to be patient. You have to be quiet. You have to keep your eyes open and your mouth closed and your record straight, and when the moment comes, you have to mean it. I'm not going to die penniless, and I'm not going to die alone, and neither are you. That's all I wanted to say. I've thought about that morning a lot since it happened. Not in the way you might expect, not with satisfaction or pride. Mostly with a kind of quiet sadness for the woman I used to be, before I sat down at that kitchen table and pulled out a $42 recorder. Here's what I've come to believe. Every choice we make plants a seed, and every seed grows into exactly the thing it was meant to grow into. Brielle made her choices over 11 years, small ones at first. The flattery, the unpaid loans, the mom this and mom that. Each little dishonesty fed the next, and by the time she was charging Louis Vuitton bags to my credit card and inventing a sick child to cover it, she'd already become the woman who was capable of all of it. She didn't fall into that morning. She built it, brick by brick, year by year. And the harvest was waiting for her whether I confronted her or not. I planted seeds too. Some of them I'm not proud of. I was lazy with my trust. I confused softness with love. I let things slide because confronting them felt harder than ignoring them. Those seeds grew into a $63,000 credit card statement. I have to own that. Nobody put me in that chair but me. But I planted other seeds along the way, too. 38 years of teaching fourth graders to tell the truth. A friendship with Bernadette that lasted longer than most marriages. A habit, learned from my own mother, of keeping records and reading the fine print. Those seeds were what saved me when I needed saving. If I could say one thing to the woman watching this who's sitting where I was sitting last January, it would be this: don't confuse goodness with weakness. They are not the same thing. A good woman can still be sharp. A kind woman can still keep records. A loving grandmother can still pull a recorder out of her cardigan pocket and end something that needed ending. Build your character every day. Not just the soft parts. Build the iron in you too. Read your statements. Ask the hard questions. Trust your own eyes before you trust somebody else's tears. There is no virtue in being fooled, and there is no shame in being careful. And when the moment comes, and it might come, remember that your dignity is not a thing you have to give away to keep the peace. Sawiris is going to grow up watching her grandmother. So is your grandchild, if you have one. They are watching what we do when we are tested. They are learning whether women like us bend or whether we hold. I held. I'm not going to pretend it was easy or that I didn't shake the whole drive home from the lawyer's office. But I held. And so can you. That's the only thing I really wanted to leave you with today. Take care of yourself. Take care of your records. And take care of your records. And take care of the little ones who are watching.